We have been anxiously awaiting this episode of our podcast. Sanna Marin is here with us in the Vital Voices Global Headquarters. As many of you know, she is the former Prime Minister of Finland. She was the youngest person to ever hold such a role, and the longest serving woman to ever be Prime Minister of her country. She has written a new book, and she is here to tell us all about it. The new book really reflects on her journey, and Hope in Action is very much a powerful look at what it takes to lead and make difficult decisions, but do so with incredible value and incredible heart. We're so honored to have you here. Thank you so much for being with us.
Well, thank you so much for having me here. I'm so honored to be here with you today. My book will launch tomorrow.
Wow.
And I'm so happy to start my book tour here.
Well, thank you. And you know, your book in so many ways, it's part memoir and part manifesto. Hope in Action, what does that mean to you?
It means that there's always hope when there is action. So it's not that first we have hope and that accumulates action, but actually when we make things happen, when we take the stand, when we want to change things, and when we act on that, that gives hope.
Wow. Well, you know, when I think back to December of 2019, and I absolutely remember that moment, you taking office, you were 34 years old, you were a new mother at the time. Take us back to what that felt like as you stepped into that scary, I'm sure, unknown of being the Prime Minister. What was that like? What were the feelings that were going on in your head at the time?
Well, when I became the Prime Minister of Finland, and I tell this in my book and in my story, it was also an accident. I didn't plan to become the Prime Minister of Finland. It happened so that the previous Prime Minister, Antti Rinne, had to resign just 6 months after taking office, and I was the first vice chair of my party and Minister for Transport and Communications at a time. And just 1 week short campaign for the premiership, I won, and then I had to take the lead. And in my book, I also described that moment when I actually got it, that I won the seat with the short campaign after the first Prime Minister had to resign. And I said to my close friends and allies that were in my apartment, do I really have to do this now? Because it was a shock also for me. I didn't plan it. It wasn't something that I aimed for, but then I had to take that action in a very short period of time. And I thought first, can I really do this? But then there was so many things happening. The first thing on my desk, the very next Monday was actually the situation in Al-Hol camp that you can also remember. And unfortunately, the camp is still there and people are still trapped in there. It was the first task on my desk, so I didn't have the time to think how I felt and how did it feel, but I actually just started working. And then a couple of months later, COVID hit and it was crisis after another. And my hands were full with the job. So
yeah, I mean, as I was thinking back, I was thinking, wow.
So it wasn't
you
easy.
Took over December 2019,
yeah.
And we all know what happened 2020. So talk about leading through crisis, because obviously COVID, the Russian invasion. Talk about what it's like to have, you know, you share a border with Russia. So what was that like? I mean, first walk us through COVID. How did you keep the citizens of your country calm, but also keep a decisive eye on the future? But then moving into, and I know you had to sort of step out of leading through COVID to deal with the situation in Ukraine.
My term and our government's term, 2019 until 2023, was filled with crises. And unfortunately, I thought that maybe the worst is over and the world would calm down, but it hasn't. We still see all these conflicts rising everywhere. We see rising of inequalities in the world. But also throughout those 4 years, there were so many things happening. First, a pandemic, global pandemic, and we had to do and make decisions that were unprecedented. We had to take, for example, in Finland for the first time after the wars, our Emergency Powers Act into use. And that was a heavy decision then. We had to close down our societies, close down services, go to remote schooling, go to remote work, and protect our citizens' life and health, whatever it took. And with little knowledge, because at the beginning of the pandemic, we didn't know what we were up against. We didn't know how the virus acts, how does it mutate, how does it infect people in the short term, but also in the long term. So there were a lot of open questions, but still we had to make such unprecedented decisions and heavy decisions that also meant economic losses and very different kind of difficulties. And then when we thought that we were easing out, the war in Ukraine started. Russia invaded Ukraine with full force, and then we had to deal with this new reality. And for Finland, it also meant applying membership in NATO with this shortest ever accession process that we have seen. So many things were happening. Pandemic, war, our NATO process, but also making sure that our government's reformistic program were fulfilled. So at the same time, we did handle these crises, I would say, moderately well. Nobody survived perfectly, but we did the best that we could. And then we fulfilled 98% of our governmental program under the leadership of 5 women, because there were 4 other women with me in the leadership of our government. Wow. And I'm really proud that I was able to work with these amazing women.
Wow. Talk a little bit about the scrutiny and sort of double standards. You talk about leading with other women. What was that like? And, I can only imagine, combined with being young, there was, I'm sure, double standard, a lot of scrutiny on you as a leader. How did you manage through that?
Well, of course, when we look leadership positions or actually women's lives just generally, there are double standards, a lot of double standards. And of course, also our government and us 5 women in power, we had to face a different kind of scrutiny and also different kind of behavior, especially that comes from the social media, the violence that women everywhere feels and faces every day. So it's not only something that us leaders or prime ministers or politicians face, but this can be machinated towards any women, just because they raises their voices, just because they want to participate, just because they say what they think. We have seen different kind of hate campaign and attacks from social media, from different platforms. So women really feel how does it feel and how is it when you are attacked. And also me, of course, as a prime minister, I met different kind of social media platforms driven violence, hate speech, etc. So there was nothing new. But then, of course, different kind of scrutiny from the media, from my behavior that was seen maybe not right or maybe sometimes even promiscuous. Like me dancing scandalously in a private apartment. Yeah.
My goodness.
And
yes.
singing. Don't forget about singing.
So what do you do in those moments? I can only imagine the hate that's been put out there. What do you do? How do you tell yourself this is not real? I mean, it's real, but I mean, how do you tell yourself, no, I don't want to focus there?
But also, not of all of it's is not real. And we also have to remember when we look at these platforms like X or some other platforms that are actually filled with hate, and there are a lot of substance that are pushed to our very eyes, even though we are not describing it or we don't want to see it. It's not something that we ordered, that we are following people that are actually feeding us this different kind of material. We have to remember it's not all real. There are a lot of bots out there. There are a lot of different kind of reasons why these are pushed into our very eyes and into our lives and into our living rooms or into our houses. And I think one of the main reasons is that there are forces out there that want women to be scared. That's why there are a lot of substances that are sexualized, that are sexualizing women. There are a lot of violent information, or not false information or misinformation. And there are a lot of different kind of substance that we don't want to see, but it's pushed to our very eyes, because there are forces out there that want to silence women. They want women not to participate, not to say what they think. So I think this isn't only organic. It's also created. And there are a lot of bots out there
100%.
that wants women to be silent.
Yeah. You know, the very successful Women's March that happened here in Washington, D.C. in January 2017, and then, of course, all over the globe, the organization that put it together was really kind of ripped apart. And when they dug into it, what they found is it was Russian bots, basically going after and ripping them apart, because they were seen as such a powerful platform and powerful, organizing body, that they were able to get women, not just, in this country, but around the world to stand up and join forces. And it was such a extraordinary moment. But it is true. This is what, autocrats fear the most, is organized and empowered women. I mean, it is one of the greatest forces to take them down. I would imagine that is something that you think about quite a bit, is the rise of autocracy and how 72% of the world's population currently lives under autocratic rule. How do you think about stabilizing democracy in these moments?
Well, how I see it in the world, we are actually witnessing two wars, if we want to use this kind of wording. There is one war of values between democratic countries and autocratic countries, and rise of authoritarianism in different parts of the world. And the sole reason, or the object of this, is actually questioning the whole rules-based international order, something that we need to defend. And I think that democracies really have to wake up and see that not everybody shares our values or our ideals, but we have to actually protect our values and remember why we fought these values at the first place. And this is to protecting the international rules-based order. And I really worry about this. But then there is another war within our democracies. And we see this rise of far right, rise of misinformation, blaming everything on immigrants or some other people, creating these situations when there are us and the others. This isn't anything new. We have actually seen this. We have seen it in Germany. We have seen it in so many other places in the world. And this is something that we should really worry about. But nowadays, because of the internet, because of social media platforms, there are so many new ways of actually engaging and going directly through our democratic system and right in the middle to our elections. And we have seen, for example, in Europe, in different countries, in elections recently, within these just few years, how, for example, Russia has tried to influence, used a lot of money to spread misinformation, to get people elect leaders and governments and politicians that are pro-Russians and pro that propaganda. So there's a lot of influencing also within our democratic systems. So we have to understand that the world isn't always that nice place. We shouldn't be naive with it. We should always protect our values, and we should protect our democratic way of thinking. And that also means protecting it within our elections, supporting people that are protecting our democracies and not putting it under a threat.
So you talk in your book about a new kind of leadership, that leadership should be empathetic, it should be collaborative, it should be values-driven. But that, in so many ways, is so different than what we see on display, right? We see this rise of, I think, more of a authoritarian, hierarchical leadership. You know, we at Vital Voices.
The age of strong men.
Right, right. How do we shift things back? Because I feel like this other form of leadership that we see women practicing around the world was really on the rise. And now it seems like, I mean, what did Zuckerberg say? We need more masculine energy in business. How do we combat that? How do we show people that this is the most effective way to lead, to be empathetic? How do we convince people that it's not weak to be empathetic or to show, you know, vulnerability? It's actually strong and powerful, and the two things can be connected.
Well, first of all, I think we have to look at the realities, and the reality actually is that there was never a threat against the masculinity or men. There was always too few women out there. There are too few women on leadership positions globally. Also in the Western democracies, there are too few women parliamentarians out there. There are too few women leading companies, leading in the private sector as well. So it was never the case that women threatened men and men were somehow under a threat. That was never the case, and that is fact number one. And the fact number two is that women represent 50% of the world. So we are entitled of 50%, not more, not less, but 50% of the power and also the resources. Right. And we should fight for them. And it's such a pity that we are actually seeing this backlash on equality and on women's and girls' and children's rights. And it's not something that we gained these rights and it's ours forever. We have to actually fight it every single day to make sure that also our daughters and the next generations will have better possibilities in life. So that's why I also wrote the book, and I want to encourage women and people to take a stand. And not only because it's their possibility or that they are entitled. It's your responsibility. It's everybody's responsibility to make sure that the next generation will have better possibilities than we had. Our mothers and grandmothers fought for these rights so that I was able to get education in Finland, that they built the great, amazing welfare society that we have. I'm from a poor family myself. I would never have any possibilities in life without the work that the women did before me. And it's also our responsibility, my generations and the generations to come, the responsibility to make sure that we are fighting for these rights and that we are actually pushing them forward and not accepting that, well, things are going the bad direction, but let's, I don't know, look social media platforms. We have to fight, and that's why there's hope if there is action.
Talk a little bit about your childhood. You mentioned in the book that it was a little bit difficult. You didn't have a lot of resources growing up, but that shaped you as a leader. Talk about that.
Well, I was raised in a poor family, I would say. Of course, in Finnish standards, but I come from a poor family. I also come from a rainbow family. So my mother realized when I was only a few years old that she's a lesbian. And in the 90s and early 2000s, it wasn't that easy. Nowadays, it's more as a topic that people talk about, and it's we are getting more used to that. There are different kind of families out there, but in the 90s, this wasn't the case. So my background is quite humble, and I also come from a family that weren't always seen as, how would you call, normal or something that we are used to. And of course, it's shaped the way I think and the way I am, and that's why it was always so important to me to protect human rights, to make sure that everybody would have same rights in our societies, and also make sure that we protect the welfare model that the women, mostly actually women, of course also men, but women from different parties work together to make sure that we have that kind of social and healthcare system, social security system, very, very good education system and daycare system. So it was very important to me that children from different kind of backgrounds and families had the same possibilities that I had. So of course my background shaped the way I think, the way I see the world, and also the way that I worked as a prime minister, as a politician, and the way I work now. So equality is really in the heart of my thinking.
And when you look back at what you were able to do, I mean, your government pushed forward great advances on climate and gender equity. What are you most proud of?
Many things. We had one of the most reformistic governmental programs, and we did a bunch of reforms. Few to mention that I'm really proud of was the push of renewing our parental leave system to make sure that fathers will use more parental leave and mothers are able to also continue their careers. And this wasn't only reform for the mothers and for women, but actually it's also so important that fathers have the right to spend time with their young children. And for a long time, fathers that wanted to use this time were viewed from the workplaces that that's not maybe what the employer wants. That's maybe not something that we wish for, you to spend that time, take that leave, to spend it at home. But when we have made legislations, not only in our government, but also before, in a way that it's more common and more usual to use that time also at home, it also gave fathers the right to say to their employers that they are proud, they want to use this time to spend at home. And I think that also builds that kind of very unique relationship between a parent and a child.
Absolutely.
And my daughter's father spent 6 months at home, and I spent 6 months, so we split it half and half, and then I was able to go back to work. And he said afterwards that it was the best decision he ever made. Because they built this super close bond with our daughter, and I think that's very unique. So we want to boost equality not only for women but everybody, and I think when we boost equality, it actually benefits everybody. Another reform that I'm really proud of was the prolonging of the mandatory educational age up till 18, so that there would be no dropouts in school. There was not many, but every year some young people that actually dropped out from our educational system. And that is very costly from their perspective as individuals, but also costly from our society's perspective. Because Finland is a small country, only 5.5 million people. We don't have the luxury, we cannot afford of losing anybody. So we prolonged that age and also made sure that all the school books and all the material needed became free for these children and young people because it was mandatory. So these are the two reforms that I would mention, but there are so many others as well. So I'm very proud of the work that we did to strengthen our welfare model.
And how do you move from policy to cultural change? Because it is one of the hardest things to do. And you talk about reforms to parental leave. And, I know from my own experience at the time when my daughter, who's here, was born 11 years ago, my husband was working at one of the most progressive think tanks in Washington. And he had great paternal leave, which is fantastic. And I was so thrilled to find that out. But there was tremendous pressure on him not to take it, that he didn't need to. Why does he need to? Your wife's going to be there. So it's not enough, obviously, just to make the policy reform. How do you push it forward into real cultural change? Because it is so important. It sets that dynamic immediately of who's taking care of the children, whose responsibility is it, and is it shared equally? So where have you seen culture really play a critical role?
Well, I see that the structural change actually also pushes the cultural change. And as I mentioned, the parental leave system, nowadays young fathers are proud also to stay at home. They are proud to take that lead also and that role in their families, because we did push in our government and also in governments before that kind of structural change that made it easier, that made it not mandatory, but mandatory in a way that you will lose that part of parental leave if the fathers don't use it. So you cannot give it to mothers. You have your own quanta that you have to use, or otherwise it's gone. So that structural change also pushed the cultural change. And I see that in many cases it is like this. So you need both, and not just wish for the cultural change and then change structures, but change structures and then the cultural change will also follow.
You talk in your book about making very difficult and sometimes unpopular decisions, as of course any world leader, head of a government would have to do. How did you rely on your values? You talk about that in your book. Talk about that. Why is it so important to have your values at the center of making those decisions that are sometimes going to be unpopular?
Well, as a leader, if you don't anchor your decisions on your values, what do you do then? What do you do when there's a situation where you have to make rapid decisions with little knowledge or information? You based it in your values. If you don't have that, then you're just drift in a sea. So I think it's very important to know your values, to stick on your values, but that doesn't mean that you cannot be pragmatic. And especially countries like Finland, we are very used to have coalition governments. No party ever has the majority, so you always have to work with other parties. And then you have to also be pragmatic. You have to find solutions with others. You have to make compromises. You have to seek consensus where it is important. So sticking on your values doesn't mean that you cannot be pragmatic or that you cannot make difficult decisions. On the contrary, when you know your values well, then it's also easier to make compromises. For example, me as a prime minister of a government with 5 parties in it, I'm very used to having tough negotiations. And we negotiated about everything throughout COVID, throughout all the reforms that we did in our government, and also because of Europe. We are part of European Union, and there are a lot of legislation, a lot of things also decided in the European fora. So we also have to negotiate about those things within our country, and then with other 26 member state in the European Union. But when you know your values, your core values and your core agenda, then you also know where your red lines are, and you can always negotiate between those red lines. But if you don't know your red lines or your values, then you're just lost in negotiations and you don't know what you can decide and what you cannot decide. And I have found that actually it's most easiest to negotiate with people that are super tough, that knows their values, that knows their red lines. They don't have to be easy. They just know, they have to know what they want. And then it's easier to negotiate because you really know what the other one and what you want, and then you can find the compromise somewhere in the middle.
Your book in so many ways is a call to arms for the next generation about how to lead with heart and why that is so important. But talk a bit about what you would want young women in particular who maybe are thinking about a life in public service. What do you want them to take from this book?
Well, I hope that they will take from this book the fact that they are actually really capable. Women rarely give themselves enough credit. They are extremely capable. I have worked with a lot of women, a lot of young women, but also a lot of women from different age groups and different backgrounds. And I can say that these women, all of them, have been extremely hardworking, extremely talented, extremely smart, extremely capable, and they just don't see it. So I wish that they, all the women that would read this book, they would understand how capable and how talented they are, and that they would have, if there's something that I would wish women to learn from men, is that kind of self-esteem. Because if there is, for example, a job interview or job application somewhere, there's 10 criteria. Women see one that they miss. I I cannot apply. I don't hit this one target from the 10. And men see it, oh, I hit this one. Of course I'm capable. So we should have also that more of that kind of attitude, and there's something that we can learn from men.
I see that there's a lot of men here tonight. What would you say to so many men who are here tonight who maybe have significant others, who have daughters, who want to push them forward and support their leadership? What is the way in which they can best do that?
Just encourage your wives, your daughters, your sisters, your mothers. We women, we need men. We love men. We just want men also to support us, and we want to support men. So I think it would be really important just to meet everybody as humans and support each other, to be kind to each other, and see the good in each other. So of course, we love our men, and we want them to love us and support us. And I was really fortunate to be together with my now ex-husband. We're still in such a good terms, and he's one of the best persons that I know. But I'm so lucky that I have had him in my life to supporting me all the way through my career in politics, and being such an amazing father.
And I know you dedicate this book to your daughter, Emma, and it's very special that you do that. And I, as I mentioned, my daughter is here tonight. And what would you say to the young women like her, like your daughter, who are coming up, who are probably looking at the world and thinking there's a lot of challenges and maybe it's too big? What would you say to them to encourage them to run towards it, go for it, be part of the solution?
Just to support and teach them every step of the way that they can. And also, I have actually thought about this a lot now with my daughter. She's now 7 years old, just started the first grade. And we had this discussion in school that always when a child starts a school, there will be a discussion about the learning, the obstacles, what is good, what is bad, how can we improve. So we had this discussion with her teacher, and one thing that really hit me, and I understood that I have actually learned this so many times in my life, to how to deal with disappointment. Because I see that women deal, maybe, I don't want to make this too general, but I have noticed in my own life and people near to me, that women are so tough on themselves. If they make some mistake, they will dwell on it for days and days and days, and I think that they have to be perfect. So how to deal with disappointments, because there's always disappointments in life. We missed and as a 7-year-old, for her a disappointment is that she missed homework. She forgot about one homework yesterday, and she felt so bad about it, or she did some mistake or something. And then I would teach her, let it go. It's okay, you don't have to be perfect. Tomorrow you will do that homework that you missed out. Or if you put some kind of paint on your mat at your room and she feels so bad about it, then I will tell her, that's fine, that's only paint. That mistake already happened, then let's not stay in that mistake. Let's continue. Let's get up, continue, and look forward. So I think this is really important lesson to learn for girls, for women. Let's not be too afraid of making things, because we can also make mistakes. Let's continue, get up and continue, and tomorrow will be better.
Wonderful. What a treat to have you here. Thank you for spending the night before your book launches here at Vital Voices Global Headquarters. I think your book is such a gift to the world. I can only imagine how difficult and how long it took to write it. And I know you're doing some extraordinary work. You continue to do extraordinary work in democracy and certainly pushing forward women's rights. So thank you. We'll continue to stay focused on what you will do next, and so appreciate you and an ally and a leader and a role model in this fight. Thank you all so much for joining us for, I think, what's been a really powerful discussion. I think that your book, one of the things that it really does is it reminds us that courage isn't the absence of fear. It is the choice to keep showing up even in those most difficult times. So thank you for that. And thank you all for tuning in to Vital Voices Live. If you've enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe and share with someone who inspires you. Until next time, I'm Elise Nelson, and this is Vital Voices Live, the place where women lead and the world listens. Thank you.